Yo, Florida Boy Jay's in the building. We are here. It is Monday. I took one day off from streaming, so I guess I broke a 15-day streak. But I did a couple episodes a day last week because in the back of my mind, I'm like, am I really gonna go live on Father's Day? And in hindsight, I probably should have just went live on Father's Day. I probably should have just worked instead. So, salute Carlton Way in the building, bro. That's my people, bro. I really appreciate Carlton Way. I appreciate Black McBain, all the regulars that come in here every show. Y'all don't miss a live stream. Salute to Robert. Salute to the Pardone twins. Salute to goddamn Larry. Salute Lenny Trees. All you guys, man. I really do be appreciating you guys coming in here supporting the show. Always when we live, even on the weekends, man. So like I said, man, thank you to you guys. And before we get started, I'm gonna let some people pile in. Just for a little update, we did a stream yesterday. What was that? Not yesterday. Saturday, we did the 1995 Source Awards review, and that was a very, very entertaining episode. If you guys missed it, let me know. I'll throw the link in the chat. We seen some funny ass stuff actually yesterday. The funniest thing we seen yesterday was I keep saying yesterday. Saturday. The funniest thing we seen Saturday was a Wu-Tang Clan member in a shiesty mask in 95, which was crazy because that Source Awards was shot in August in New York. So there was no reason why a nigga should be running around in shiesty in August of anywhere in the United States. And then Diddy came out and had like a weird prayer he did that was kind of like, is this like what is this? What kind of prayer is this? And then when he was with Biggie doing One More Chance on stage, he had a zesty nigga with his shirt off. Well, I don't know if he was ashy or oiled up, but he was sitting there gyrating with a sign. And I was like, yo, this is very zesty. Like, if this is a hip hop show, why y'all got a nigga with his shirt off on stage? I thought it was weird. I'm sure a few other people thought it was weird. But nonetheless, we had a great show. And what we're going to do now is start getting this shit cracking. Like I said, been talking for a few minutes, let people pile on in here. I'm about to present the screen, share screen. And I'm thinking, we're going to go to Inner City Press because like I started doing, it's funny people start piling here when I start showing the video. But what I wanted to do today, and like I think I started last Friday, was this. When we cover these Diddy topics, I'm going to go to the white journalists first. It's not racist. It's just when the white journalists cover it, it's just I compare it to a black church and a white church. When a white person's covering the story, it's a 4-minute video, 8-minute video, 7-minute video, 6-minute video. They tell you everything that's going on and they get back to work. Just like a white church. They're going to go about 30 scriptures, 2 pages, and you might be out in 30 minutes to an hour. Black covered journalists who've been covering this, hooting, hollering, walking around this motherfucker, rubbing a nose, giving niggas shout outs, remixing the story, lying about Diddy talking, Kanye talking to him. And by the 30-minute mark, an hour mark, I don't know what the hell they said. It's like some of these black journalists, and I love them. You know what I'm saying? I love watching them. But for now on, like I said, we cover this trial. I'm going to give you the white perspective first so you can kind of get the highly detailed, concise version of what is taking place. And then after we show the white people, then we will show the niggas with their theatrics, shining, dancing, giving shout outs, exaggerating the story, all that, man. So without further ado, let's full screen it. This is the good folks at, who is this again? Inner City Press. Salute him. He's going to let us know, hit chat, super chat, like, cash out, $ Florida Boy J, and we lit. Let's go.
Okay, here we are, Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, here at the Southern District of New York Courthouse. Today, Monday, June 16th. And we're here for day 24 of U.S. versus Sean Combs. And we're going in. Today, there should be, either today or tomorrow, I'm hoping today, Brandon Paul. He was described as the drug mule of Combs. And I think he's given that he actually faced some prosecutorial fire, he may be in a better position. Last week on Friday, Jonathan Perez, describing his day-to-day work setting up King's nights for Sean Combs and guests, and then being grilled about who leaked one of the videos that he found on an iPad. It was very reminiscent of Capricorn Clark getting grilled on Broadway. Anyway, we're down to the wire here. We're down to at least of the government's case. The big fight that we're heading in it right now for is about Juror 6. It's funny. The fight is over, it would seem. On Friday, Judge Subramanian said he's out. Juror 6 had said he lived in the Bronx. Then he said he visits his girlfriend / mother of his child in New Jersey. Then supposedly, after all that, after he was on the jury, he somehow got into a discussion with court staff and talked about Jersey. That's the best we can make out from what's said in open court. And that's what we report on, what's said in open court, including what's shown on the screens. And Subramanian said, that's it. It seems clear that this guy was trying desperately to get onto the jury, so he's got to be off. But then Agnifilo made a passionate plea, talking about the right to a jury of one's peers and it's constitutional, apparently appellate issues. Xavier Donaldson said, it's so, in this district, there's so many problems with the racial composition of juries. You've done a great job, Judge, but, this is key. And then Brian Steele said the government knew all along that Juror 6 was a problem, but didn't say anything until they thought that he was pro-Diddy. So, Judge Subramanian then said, I want to thank Mr. Agnifilo and Mr. Donaldson for their arguments, and if my thinking changes, I'll let you know. Well, there's certainly nothing in the docket, but in this case, who knows? Despite our filing in week 1, many things are not being docketed. The only thing docketed over the weekend, to my knowledge, was Alexander Shapiro, the essentially appellate lawyer of Combs, making an argument about Juror 6 with many redactions, but at least it went into the docket. Again, that's the thing here. They seem to believe that if anything could be redacted, you can just withhold the whole thing until weeks later. And it's making it very difficult to report on the case. And it's making it very dangerous too, because you don't know what's been admitted and what's not been admitted. You don't know, what arguments are being made in these non-docketed filings. So we're just going to continue blasting away. What can I say? Now, also in EDNY today, I think we can say this. It hasn't happened yet. Noon, there's supposed to be a press conference about a gang takedown. Not that new anymore. Nacella will be having a press conference on the record. And in UN/SDNY news, there was a filing on Friday in the UNRWA case in which the plaintiffs have doubled down on their argument that UNRWA is not immune, that UNRWA is not a creation, can avail itself of the UN's otherwise applicable. They assume immunity. We actually don't think that the UN as a whole should be immune. I think that they've abused it in such things as the Haiti cholera case, where they argued in courts they can't be sued despite bringing cholera that killed 10,000 people in Haiti. And of course, on the First Amendment, that they can ban any journalist they want for any reason they want and not even have to answer letters from law firms pro bono such as Quinn Emanuel. So we're going to continue to push as the UN, but right now we're going in because que pasa with Juror 6. To be continued, Inner City Press.
What you're pretty much going to be getting this week is the summary witnesses. It's not going to be too many salacious people popping out the woodwork and everything, but you're going to get a lot of summary witnesses. This is that point in the case, so I just want to let everybody know, just give you a little bit of context. We're going to switch it over to Lauren Cohn. I don't know if this is some good milk or some good horchata. Can the chat let me know, is this good milk or is this good horchata? I don't know. Y'all let me know. I dated a Brazilian girl that kind of looked like that back from 2015 to 2022 or something. She just looks like she's Hispanic, a little spicy white, I like to say. And here she goes with the full recap.
Day 24 of the United States versus Sean Combs, and juror number 6 was officially dismissed this morning. The defense had filed a letter on the 15th, which was last night, to the judge, stating that if this juror was officially dismissed, they would most likely move for a mistrial. They, again, I had mentioned this before, they really think that there is some racial bias going on because he was one of 5 Black jurors. I think I had originally said 4, but there were 5. And the judge said that it would be improper to allow race to play a factor as to the fitness of this juror because there were clear inconsistencies when he was questioned multiple times about his residency. You know, the judge said, look, this is why we have alternates. And there was an alternate juror in his place. And I think he'll be questioned by the end of the day. But this alternate juror, he was significantly older. He was also a male. And, you know, just my opinion really quick, I watch the juror that was dismissed a lot because he was kind of on the end, and I saw his facial expressions. He seemed to be horrified a lot of the time. He was stressed or looked stressed a lot of the time. He would always look at the clock. So, you know, I don't know if that meant that he thinks Diddy is guilty, not guilty, but I'm just saying he was one of the jurors that did show a lot of expression. So then we started with the summary witness, Ananya Sankar, who worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office. She is a paralegal specialist, and she organizes the intake of evidence and trial prep. So she was pretty much taking us through communications. There were these charts on the screen, and it was KK's devices from March of 2016 through February of 2024. And she kind of went through certain text messages and recordings and things from KK's phone and told us why they were accurate, went through all these accuracy procedures and whatnot. Now, some of these text messages, I mean, I'll just go through the gist of what we saw, which I think is just more corroboration to the indictment and I guess the government's case in general, because there were texts about getting cash for Diddy when he was at these hotels, assistants, you know, picking it up from whichever security guard had the cash. There was also an assistant texting, Jessica Ruiz texted KK flight information for, quote, Paul Arthur, who we know was an escort. That directly relates to the indictment as well, transportation to engage in prostitution. There was a text from Jane asking KK for cash for Diddy around 5 to 10K. There were also texts about getting packages from someone named Guido, who I guess we're speculating is perhaps a drug dealer, because there was multiple mentions of Guido in Christina Quorum's text messages. There were also some audio recordings. One of them, I believe we had heard before. It was Diddy talking to Jane in 2023, shortly after Cassie's lawsuit dropped, just saying, you know, I'm sorry that you felt this way. I didn't know that, you know, how do we move on, etc. And then Jane kind of crying and you know, just kind of answering, yeah, okay, you know, just whatever. She wasn't saying much. And then we saw text messages in December of 2023, really long messages from Jane to Diddy, and she is saying all the right buzzwords here. She's saying that she felt exploited and, quote, coerced, you know, being with him and all these things for so long. And then she texts KK about the fact that Diddy is trying to blackmail her with this sex tape and show it to her baby daddy if she doesn't comply. I didn't, again, these text messages were shown so quickly on the screen. I didn't get a chance to write all of it down, but it was something along those lines. And then we saw pictures of screenshots from KK's phone of some of these text messages, and then a video where there was a video of the phone, and it was like a female's hand holding it. And just as a side note, I've been thinking that, you know, KK cooperated pretty much after Cassie's lawsuit dropped and kind of flipped and got some kind of deal where she could work with the government and help them get, you know, these witnesses and sort of guide them as to where they should be looking. Because again, she's not taking the stand, obviously, and there's just a lot of information here. Oh, by the way, on Friday, I got stung by a bee out here, which is crazy. I pulled the stinger out. But anyway, okay, so then we, you know, there was, again, more text between KK and assistants. You know, there was one that said something like, oh, like he's going to want a king night. And the assistant was like, oh no, I'm going to have to re-up on baby oil and stuff like that. Then we saw text messages between D-Rock and Diddy. And it's unclear to me if these messages also came from KK's phone. I'm not quite sure. Actually, I mean, they could have, but again, these were only between D-Rock and Diddy, and then D-Rock and Mia. So I don't think those came from KK's, but I will confirm where they came from after, or this afternoon. But there was text messages between D-Rock and Diddy where D-Rock said, this is November of 2023. He was checking on Diddy. This was after Cassie's lawsuit dropped, saying, I love you, man. I'm here for you. And there was a heart emoji. And then Diddy said the same thing, I love you. Thanks for checking in. And then there was a text message. This has nothing to do with the case. I just kind of thought it was funny because D-Rock was like, send me a picture of your Thanksgiving plate, man. Let's keep the tradition alive. Like they send each other pictures of their Thanksgiving plates. But then I think the meat of this really was the text between D-Rock and Mia, and the witness Sankar kind of showed us how he would text Mia, then go back to Diddy and say, this is what she said. This was the last thing she said. I just got a hold of her. And then we went over the text messages that Diddy had formally sent Mia, which said, hey, I just want to talk to you type of thing. And during Tenny Garagos's cross-examination, she kind of pointed out a couple things within those text messages that I thought were maybe important. During Mia's direct examination, she had talked about how when D-Rock reached out to her initially, she had felt like he was offering to send her money. And I remember listening to this thinking, how did she gather that what he asked, like when he said, can I send you something? Because she was scuba diving in Honduras or whatever. I just wanted to know how she kind of figured that was money, because I didn't really get that. But then we saw text messages that we hadn't seen before from Mia to D-Rock, where she had said, I'm low on quote unquote Skrilla. And then she kind of wrote AKA money. And that's when he's like, let me send you something. And she's like, oh no, don't worry about it type of thing. So Tenny kind of pointed that out. Tenny pointed out, D-Rock saying, oh, Mia's out of the country. And once he said that, there was no more calls between Diddy and Mia, because we had seen like 6 calls, I think, placed to Mia after he was communicating with D-Rock. And this was February of 2024. So Tenny was kind of pointing out, once he heard that, he didn't bother her again. She pointed out that he just said, Mia, I want to talk to you. I just want my memory jogged type of thing. And so I had stepped out at that point to do another hit for Nancy Grace. And I don't know why I said it like that, Nancy Grace. So I stepped out to do a hit for Nancy. So there was another witness on the stand after Ananya Sankar, and she was a government witness, a special agent that was just going through some other charts to confirm their accuracy and whatnot. So I'll do an update on what I missed later today, but that is really it for the morning for the most part. Pretty uneventful besides the juror. So again, the government should rest its case this week. Yay. Hopefully that means we're halfway through. All right. I'll talk to everybody later.
All right. So she gave us a little bit of information. We're going to go ahead and take it to Good Logic real quick and let him break this down. So Good Logic. Let me go ahead and share this with you guys. 1, 2, 3.
For the Diddy trial, looks as if juror number 6 may be in peril of losing his spot on the jury for residency issues. This could be incredibly significant. Certainly the defense thinks so. The residency issues arise from the fact that to be eligible to serve in the Southern District of New York, you must reside in one of the counties that the SDNY covers. That would include Manhattan and the Bronx. In his responses to voir dire, juror number 6 claims that sometimes he's living with his girlfriend in New Jersey. Then he says it's his daughter he's living with in New Jersey. Then he says he's with his aunt in the Bronx or his girlfriend in the Bronx. His answers seem all over the place, and the state has made the argument for the judge, and the judge seems inclined to side with them, that he's purposefully shading his answers, his responses, in order to make himself eligible to serve on the jury. And the judge seems inclined towards removing him because he's suspicious that if he's trying to shade his answers and really wants to get on the jury that badly, that implies a particular bias. Now, the defense is very upset by the notion that he may be removed, as he is the lone black male on the jury. A couple of black females, but he is the lone black male. The defense has already raised issues claiming that the state has been purposefully trying to exclude various jurors on the basis of race. This came up before the trial actually started, when they noted that they only had one black male and a couple of black females on the jury. And the judge has flat out rejected that. He's actually seems to take affront at the notion and has gone through various potential jurors to show that there was nothing wrong or amiss with the way that the prosecution handled their jury selection, and he flat out has rejected any claim that race played a factor here, and he's pointed to the fact that Donaldson from the defense has admired the way the process has worked here. I'm Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. I'm the Southern New York. If you want more information on this, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell. Godspeed. 24 of the Diddy trial looks as if juror number 6 may be in peril, losing his spot on.
All right, and we're going to let tap in a second. We'll just let Law and Crime break it down for us real quick, see what they seen, and we're going to take it to Sean G. Hit the like button, hit chat. Let's get cracking.
Milner, who's been there every day of this currently 6-week trial, the Sean Diddy Combs federal court case. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's great to see you. We have so many questions coming in. Aside from the fact that Marion DN, who says, meanwhile in London, not me delaying the family dinner to see Elizabeth come on. So you have a lot of people who are waiting to hear you. Let me ask you this. We got a question that came in from Allison Jones. Question for Elizabeth. Which team looks more worried, the defense or the prosecution?
Was that which team looks more ready? Is that what the question
was?
Worried. Oh, okay. That's a good question. Yeah, I think it kind of goes a little bit of both ways, because obviously we're kind of on the heels of what is about to be the defense case, right? And so I think they're kind of collecting everything, making sure all their ducks are in a row. But also with the government's case, I'm wondering, from the most part, from what we're understanding, it seems like the next big witness per se is going to be Brendan Paul. So as Brendan Paul's going to be one of the final witnesses, I'm wondering, do they have kind of something up their sleeves? Is there going to be kind of this big shocker moment with his testimony? Because outside of him testifying this week, we're really just hearing a lot from summary witnesses at this point. And so I'm wondering at this point also who might be a little bit more worried. But I think with the dismissal of the juror that happened this morning, it seemed like the defense might be a teensy, and I say that very, very lightly, might be a teensy bit worried. They seemed a little upset that the juror was dismissed.
Can we talk about this? Talk to us about what happened with the juror today that was dismissed. And also, apparently, there's an issue with another juror too. What's going on?
Yeah. So I think a lot of us wanted to know what was going to be happening to juror number 6. Now, we learned on Friday that the judge was leaning towards dismissing the juror, but then Xavier Donaldson, he got up, he kind of made this really impassioned speech about why this particular juror should stay on. And a lot of it had to do with race and diversity on the jury. And if that juror were to be dismissed, what kind of message would that send to other potential jurors too? And so, the judge weighed both decisions really, and took the weekend to kind of think things over. So we learned about what his ultimate ruling was going to be first thing. And so he really kind of took into account what the defense had, and they released a filing over the weekend that I think was about 15 pages long of all the reasons why this particular juror shouldn't be dismissed, also kind of throwing a little bit of light shade here and there to the prosecution. And so the judge took that all in, and he said this morning, I understand its importance, but this amount of scrutiny isn't necessarily necessary. And so the judge was like, the inconsistencies from the juror raised a lot of these issues as far as why he was ultimately dismissed. So the judge said he went back, he looked at the record closely from voir dire, also to what the discussions were around the robing room, because remember, everybody, a lot of these inconsistencies really kind of had to do with this particular juror and whether or not he really revealed where he was truly living, whether or not it was in Jersey or in the Bronx. And so the judge went back, looked at everything, and said that he had serious concerns about the candor and how this particular juror, might have skewed his answers to stay on witnessing, right? Like, he has been practicing law, and I hate to put it this way, since I was like a little kid. And so he's had lots of experience kind of seeing that the diversity pool. I got that out there. But so, I don't have kind of that same, I guess, relation that he does as being a lawyer, being a criminal defense attorney. And so I understood where his argument was coming from, right? But I also was kind of also wondering, why were they so keen on having this particular juror when altogether this jury pool was very diverse from what I'm seeing. And so I understood his argument, but I also saw kind of both ways when it came to why this particular juror was dismissed. And I think, honestly, the judge made the right decision here.
Let me ask you about Christina Coram, because we have a question that came in, and you're an expert in this case since you've been following it. And by the way, today, Christina Coram has maybe come up more in these exhibits, in this evidence from this summary witness more than throughout this trial. Question from Mikey John. Elizabeth, are you surprised that KK wasn't called to the stand yet?
Yes, absolutely. Like that, no brainer. I'm truly surprised that she's not being called as a government witness, especially because they have her devices. She could be somebody who could really kind of tie up the loose ends or maybe answer the questions that a lot of us still have in our brains. And so I'm really surprised that, especially as we're trickling down to the end of the government's case, that the next witness isn't Christina Coram. And I'm wondering at this point, is it possible the defense might call her? And if the defense does call her, what that could look like. And so I'm really and truly surprised that they're using her devices. The government is, but they're not calling her as a witness. So yes, definitely surprised there.
And we have a question from Allison Thompson about the judge, Judge Arun Subramanian. What has the judge's body language been like? Do you get any vibes as to which side is favored? Well, the judge shouldn't favor any side, but do you get a, I mean, we don't know how he's behaving, what his demeanor's like. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so as far as the judge's demeanor, all across the board from what I've seen so far during this trial and even during the pretrial hearings, is that he's very fair. Like, it's never a situation where you're kind of like, oh, he's a little pro-government here or he's a little pro-defense here. He really kind of gives both sides their wins when it's applicable, right? And even as in terms of just his body language while listening to the testimony, and if there's an objection from one side. So, for example, if the defense has an objection to the prosecution's line of questioning, he kind of gives the prosecution a little bit of leeway to be like, okay, maybe you want to rephrase that question so that way we can get rid of the objection, so that way we can continue on with the proceedings. And then if there's a point where, there's an objection, there has to be a discussion that's had in the sidebar, he's willing to do a sidebar. And so from the most part, and this should be how every judge kind of operates a courtroom, I think you should always take notes from Judge Arun Subramanian. He is above board. He is fair on both sides. And really, it's never a situation where you have to feel like he is, or you think that he is biased in any sort of way.
Let me get another question to you, Elizabeth, before we have to let you go. This is from Lisa5472. How was Diddy when they finally said the juror was dismissed?
I think he was a little bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie, especially given the long kind of defense letter that was put in over the weekend, given the arguments that were made by his defense attorneys outside of just Xavier Donaldson. It was also, Brian still did make a quick argument on Friday, but also Mark Agnifilo too. And so I think from what I could tell of just Diddy's body language and demeanor, it seemed like this was something he was kind of a little upset about as far as this particular juror being dismissed. And so, it's interesting to see kind of how his movements have been so far ever since then, especially because we're seeing so many summary witness charts and all of this stuff, and they're putting all the pieces of the puzzle kind of in a chart format to the jury. But he did seem a little down and disappointed by this juror's dismissal today.
Elizabeth, before we dismiss you, before you have to head back into the courtroom, aside from just the kind and positive comments you've been receiving from our viewers, and at least one person who's concerned about when you're actually getting lunch and when you have time to eat, I did want to ask you this question from Shai. Please ask Elizabeth Milner, what is used to block the face of pseudonym witnesses?
Suit everybody in here. We're going to go ahead and switch it back to Good Logic. He just dropped this like 4 or 5 minutes ago. So this is, probably the freshest video we got. Then breaking it down. This is more forensic evidence, apparently. See?
And if you're the state, the best part of your day today may have come before the jury even came into the courtroom. I am Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Logic. I'm a New York litigator who's practiced in this very courthouse in the Southern District of New York. And I'm here to break down legal perspectives as to how this trial is progressing, how well the state is doing, how well the defense is doing, and how fair the judge is being in handling this case. If that sort of thing is your deal, I urge you to please make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell so you get notifications, because I'm providing coverage that no one else is even trying to provide. And when I say that they started off well, that was the highlight of the day. What I'm referring to is that the U.S. Attorney moved to have juror number 6 removed from the jury. and have him replaced by an alternate. Now, the basis of this is an issue with respect to his residency. In order to qualify to serve on the jury, you have to be a resident of the state of New York. And when he was answering questions in his voir dire about that, he seemed to give very conflicting responses. In some places, he says that he's living with his girlfriend in New Jersey, and then he says it's with his daughter in New Jersey, and then he's with his girlfriend in the Bronx. And they speculate that perhaps he's really living in New Jersey, and raised before the trial even started that issues that they felt that the state was purposefully trying to remove black people from the jury, and raised an issue like that to the judge, and the judge specifically said that he takes that charge very seriously, and said that he's found absolutely no indication that anything that the state has done during the jury selection process or with respect to trying to remove juror number 6 was in any way, shape, or form motivated by race. He certainly seems to be doing his best to try to curtail a potential appeal with his defiant findings of fact as to how the state has been conducting itself. So, because questions of fact will be far more difficult to be overturned on issues of appeal. And he even pointed to Xavier Donaldson, who was one of the members of the Diddy defense team, who complimented the jury process as working fairly to try and strengthen the legitimacy of his finding that this is not a race-based decision. And race certainly cannot be discounted as something that is likely a significant factor. Either you can look at it, and this is not exclusive, this is far from exclusive to this case. For a century now, attorneys have always felt that trying to load up the jury with a demographic that seems likely to be favorable to your particular side is an important part of the jury selection process. And the Supreme Court has banished anyone from being able to, and has outlawed the right of attorneys to try and remove people purely on the basis of their particular demographic. So this is not something that's new. It's as old as litigation itself. The question as far in this particular case, when you're talking about a rap star, and especially when there might be things that play into the cultural differences, you can see how race could, in theory, play a significant role, whether with respect to proper interactions between men and women, with respect to a personal affinity, that there's an expectation that a black man may likely have a more of an interest in the celebrity status of a Diddy than, let's say, a 70-year-old white woman. That's not like a crazy conclusion to reach. So it's not surprising that in this particular case, both parties would be very conscious about it, but at the same time, intelligent enough to recognize that there has to be legitimacy to where you're coming from here. The last part I'm giving you here is speculation about pragmatically the practice rather than what's the theoretical legal perspective on these things. I'm just trying to be as real with you as possible. Now, the first witness who came up for the state today was Ananya Senkar. She's a U.S. paralegal who reviewed charts that were put together to ensure that these charts, which are supposed to show various text exchanges and communications, to try and simplify it for the jury. So she came in to vouch for the fact that the different things that were put into the charts were actually established by evidence that has been properly put before this court. So she would basically look through they put together a chart of different text messages, and each one she corroborates that this one ties into exhibit C-104, and that put together a timeline to try and put together exactly how, something that's much more comprehensible for the jury than what we've seen so far. The testimony itself, we don't get a chance. I haven't got a chance to look through the chart. The testimony itself was pretty boring. I mean, it sounded as if a lot of the stuff that's put into this, and it's only 33 pages, and although there are numerous charts, this is the chart that we were looking at. It's a lot of conversations that don't even seem to really prove very much. I was left wondering about the relevance of a lot of the different conversations, like conversations between D-Rock, one of Diddy's security guards, and Mia, who's a personal assistant who worked for Diddy, where she's on vacation and saying, yeah, she feels great, to finally get away. I'm like, I don't even know why they put this in here. This is part of their summary. This is part of this. I don't even understand it. I mean, I'm sure there's other stuff in there that's more relevant, but it just seemed it just seemed like it wasn't really helping draw your attention to the factors which should lead a jury to conclude that they should convict. At least from that was my personal takeaway from it. I was very, very bored by it. On cross-examination, we got we had Tenny Garagos come up, and she was trying to establish that there's a lot of gaps, even in the middle of a conversation that's happening there. That the U.S. attorney was specifically selecting certain messages that they felt would help their case and leaving out other things that might hurt the context of what you're seeing in this synopsis, which I guess is certainly a fair point to make. I was talking to someone else about, like, what are you taking from this witness that might be helping the state? He said, I think it might be bolstering Mia, her testimony. It could be bolstering perhaps Cassie and help to define the credibility. And if he found that, it's possible that some jurors may find that as well. I personally didn't find it to be very compelling. But again, that's my personal takeaway as opposed to what could be taken from it, and clearly others have. And it's possible that other members of the jury have taken away some further corroboration to support the testimony that we've previously heard. The last witness we had, who's only been on the stand so far for 15 minutes or 25 minutes of direct testimony, is an investigator from the U.S. Attorney's Office who has her own charts. And these charts to me are a little bit more compelling in that these are the first chart we were looking at so far is supposed to be documenting the different meetings that that Diddy purportedly attended. And Diddy attending with Cassie, or I guess we're going to see, we haven't seen yet, we'll see with Jane and other, when they call meetings, they're referring to, it seems like so far from what we've seen, freak-offs and hotel nights. And this is where we have really the first real introduction of hardcore evidence, forensic evidence, to try and tie in the charge number 4 and charge number 5. That is the two charges, those are the smallest charges, which carry a maximum 10-year sentence for interstate transportation for the purposes of engaging in illegal sexual activity. Now, specifically referring to flying in various entertainers, porn stars from interstate for the purposes of engaging in commercial sex or legal sex, and that those charges, that as far as the forensic evidence, so what we have from this witness, she brought up that she showed us a text exchange between Diddy and a performer by the name of Jules. He was in Los Angeles, and that Diddy was flying him into New York City to perform at the London Hotel between December 11, 2009 and December 13th of 2009. And they show the text exchange, which was kind of a little interesting there, where Jules seems as if he has a woman at home who doesn't like the idea of him going to New York and is suspicious that he's going there to engage in things involving Diddy and Cassie. So he said, I'm going to need you to send me a text, which is going to help me out here. And he said, call me so we can work this out. And Diddy sends a text after they have a brief phone call, and Diddy sends a text saying, yeah, I'm not going to be in New York. I'm going to be in Chicago. I've got a show to do, and Cassie's in London. So, and then he's like, and then the next response from Jules is, okay, that worked. So when are we coming in here? He's like, okay, I'll have you come in here on Friday, and I'll fly you out. And then the next exhibit that was shared with us was an email from Diddy to his manager, Tony Bias, telling him that he needed her to arrange a flight under the name Jules Theodore, which that's Jules' full name, and from LA on Friday from LA to New York, and also booking a hotel in New York called London. So maybe that's what Diddy meant when he said as far as Cassie's going to be in London, but it's their own little inside joke there. So yeah, that's what we had. Now, with respect to the defense, one of the things that we should expect to see from the defense on cross is that Tenny was raising that she didn't like that that the state on direct keeps referring to this as a meeting. If you think about it, technically what we have here is arrangements that would enable him to fly in. But there's no one who knows that he did fly in. There's no testimony from Jules saying that he's flown in. So we don't know that he's flown in, or as far as that he flew in on that particular date. And that's probably where the defense is looking to attack on this. They're probably looking to attack and say, just because they discussed it and just because there was a flight arrangement and they booked a hotel, which we have evidence of a reservation being made as well, that doesn't mean that he actually came. And if Cassie cannot remember that particular incident, or if we don't have anyone testifying that he actually showed up there, in that case, in theory, they might be able to puncture a hole in that charge. Like I said, the 4th and 5th charges for interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution. So that's where we're at so far. If you like this type of content, I urge you make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that bell so you get all notifications, and I will catch you later. Till then, Godspeed.
Resist and to support and detail the reasons why.
My bad. I was a little I was on mute. Forgot I was on mute. Like I said before, I'm going to play a little bit of Unc. I'm not going to play everything he's going to say, but just a little bit, just his perspective on the jury situation today with juror number 6 and who was replaced with. Because I don't think that we heard just that conversation about the replacement in, the jury pool. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Juror number 6 should remain on the jury. Now that juror number 6 is off the jury, juror number 6 was a black male. There's only one black male left on the jury. I think he was replaced with a white male. They talked about something. I think they both, the defense and the prosecution, has to question this new juror, whatever that means. But at the end of the day, juror number 6 has been dismissed. This was a blow for Puff. It's not a good thing for Puffy. Today wasn't a good day, in my opinion. When you have a jury of your peers, your true peers, you feel better about your situation. Puffy being a black male, I think Puffy is a foundational black American male. And Alexandra Shapiro talks about that. She talks about that in page 2 of a 14-page document. The fairness of the trial depends in part on having jurors with backgrounds similar to Mr. Combs share their perspectives on the evidence with other jurors from diverse backgrounds during deliberations. Removing this particular juror will deprive Mr. Combs of that important perspective, and it is no answer to simply say that there are other black jurors or other males on the jury. So, that's where we are. I'm disappointed, me personally, as a foundational black American male, I'm disappointed, right? And Alexandra Shapiro, who is a white woman She goes in great detail about, the discrimination and the issues that go on with, the criminal justice system and foundational Black American men. Now, me, myself, having been in the federal system, I know this firsthand, how a lot of this goes down. And, in that respect, it's personal to me because I've gone through the system and I've heard the stories of what the system has done. You know what's funny? When I was at Morgantown, FCI Morgantown, when I was in federal prison, there was about 1,100 to 1,200 inmates. And out of that 1,100 to 1,200 inmates, greater than 80% were foundational Black American men. And I may be low. It may be even higher than that. So I've seen firsthand how the criminal justice system, Sean, what's up? Puffy will be okay, brother. The truth is the truth. They knew they was losing, so they used this card, and this sorry ass judge allowed it. I've heard stories when I was in the joint, foundational Black American men, first drug offense, first non-violent drug offense, 240 months, 20 years. I've heard stories, somebody that I knew, somebody that I spoke to every day. First drug offense, non-violent drug offense, who was Jessica Ruiz. Why Jules, the male escort, didn't testify? I'm thinking he wasn't there. How do you feel?
The matter is that, and they're like, and because she, first of all, they wanted the evidence kept out, saying, no, you can't bring the phone call of this man call on your behalf to settle. Now, she did not, in fact, settle with Diddy, okay? She did not settle with Diddy. But again, if all this is lies, then why would Diddy, the cheapest person in the world, and he got to be because you got your house raided because you want to give Little Rod 30, 40, 50,000, however much you wanted, and you got your whole career and your legacy destroyed because you played in Cassie's face and didn't want to give, you played in Cassie's face, and she ended up following her lawsuit, but that sparked the investigation with the Southern District of New York, New York State, and New York City. But Southern District of New York actually took it over. Why would you call and have this man call on your behalf to settle with something that never even happened? And they said the settlement negotiations, I believe, sources are saying, started at $1 million. Again, why would you do that? Okay, Diddy's team was fighting. No, you got to keep the evidence out of court. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. They came back and said, so anyway, the judge came back and said, and they're like, and because she, first of all, they wanted the evidence kept out, saying, no, you can't bring the phone call of Rob Holiday into it because it's hearsay upon hearsay. It was a FaceTime call, first of all, right? And Bono might have actually recorded it. I don't know. But anyway, let's bring Rob Holiday in here and see what they have to say. Diddy's team is fighting against that whilst simultaneously saying that they want a mistrial because Bono lied. Do you see the games that they play? The fact that they know this was true, the fact that they know that this wasn't a mistrial, right? I mean, they knew it was true. The fact that they knew Bono was doing this and they're still trying to get a mistrial, they just want it going and coming, but you can't have it both ways. Why do you want the evidence excluded if it didn't happen? Now you're trying to say it's all lie and you want a mistrial. The judge said, no, it is not grounds for a mistrial. He will decide on whether that FaceTime call can come into evidence because the government is saying since you called her a liar, it proves, since you called her a liar, it 100% proves that something happened. She might have gotten the date wrong by maybe it happened on the 22nd or the 21st. Maybe it, it couldn't have happened on the 26th because they have that thing. But maybe it happened on the 22nd, the 21st, the 20th. The point of the matter is it happened, okay? Now listen, hey, how are you? Diddy came in smiling. He was feeling himself, tiptoeing in the court, you know? I think he thought some of these mistrials were going to be answered. I think he thought that he was going to be able to keep juror number 6 and some of these mistrials won't go through. I don't know what his lawyers are telling him, but he needs to stop listening. All right. He came in smiling after the judge said this, not so much. He got that serious look on his face and his head was cocked to the side, right? Now, here's the thing. Then the judge went into juror number 6, right? And he had some good points. He said, listen, first of all, I want to tell you guys, he said, this amount of scrutiny is not required. So he let the court already know in my tentative decision on Friday, I had a right, okay? I thought, he's like, I had a right to stand in my ruling. But because Xavier said stuff and the court takes that very seriously, he looked into it more, right? Now, he said this morning, right? He said Friday morning, we got into it, right? And I expressed my preliminary view that the record was insufficient to remove because just as an offhanded conversation, he didn't really see a point of removing it. Remember in the document, a 14-page document that Diddy filed, they were stunned in fact, that the judge, right, would actually completely turn around what he said, what he felt. But again, the judge said that Friday morning, I expressed my preliminary view that based off of the information at hand, the record was insufficient to remove the juror, right? Now, the government filed a paper saying, okay, listen, it's up to you whether you're going to remove them, but we do think that these inconsistencies are sufficient enough. We think the juror might have issues with candor, and the candor goes to the qualification of you being a juror. See, here's the thing with a juror, right? It is a test of honesty. And I'm not saying that juror lied, but you have to be a lot of candor. So when somebody asks you where you live, there's only 2 questions that when you go into a jury, they really care about. I mean, there's a lot, but these are the 2 basics. Where do you live to make sure you're in jurisdiction? And also, have you ever been arrested? You have to be overly forthcoming. You have to explain a lot. Why? Because you need candor. Because there can never be a hint or a thought or anything that you were trying to stack the deck in your favor. Now, this is a high-profile case. People write books from being on the jury. You get to go on the press court circuit. Now, I'm not saying juror number 6 was interested in that, but in high-profile cases, there are reasons that people want to stay. Sometimes you just want to put your finger on the scale, whatever that may be, but ask yourself, why would you want to be there and judge whether somebody is guilty or innocent unless you have a clear bias? When you have to twist stories to go, but it's not over, right? The defense, right? The defense, when the judge was like, listen, let's talk to him. The defense Friday were the first ones to say in the morning, further questioning would have a chilling effect on a juror. So they were trying to say that if you ask a juror to even clarify, that's going to have a chilling effect. The juror might get mad. The juror might get angry. It might actually push the juries. They might feel like they're being watched.
That's going on right here in the first half of the court. I call it the morning
Queen
session.
Sheba,
So
we gotta
it's
see what
gonna
she
give you a
got to
few
say.
minutes.
I found out about her this weekend. I found out about Queen Sheba this weekend. She has pretty good sites.
All right. And sometimes I wish I could. Sometimes I just don't have the lead time to be able to give y'all like a heads up or a notice that I am going live. So please work with me. There's just a lot of things that's happening. There are some defense is going to swing this thing. Let me know if y'all can hear me. Everybody can hear me? I'm gonna just say this. The jurors that are remaining that I can count and I'm looking at, they seem to be very astute men with a high level of intellect. married men for the most part. And when you think about why is that important, the psychology and the behavior of the jury, if these are astute married men, you probably can assume that they're going to be somewhat very protective over family, right? And if we can assume that, not all, because we don't know for sure, but if we can assume that these men have children and some may even have daughters, of course they're going to find a problem with this activity, whether it was consensual or not. So I think the defense is in trouble. I think it's a huge move on the behalf of the government. Listen, this is legal chess, and the government just made a huge move, right? So right now on the witness stand, let me back up a little bit. Let me back up. The defense actually cited their concern of the government replacing, this is the judge's words, replacing a Black man with a white juror. And they just kind of made the argument, this has a racial undertone to it. The judge said, listen, that's not correct. This is the first time in 25 years where we've actually had a diverse jury of this manner, right? So the judge is pushing back. He did push back to the defense, saying you really have no basis on your claims of racism. We've been very diverse. We've taken very careful steps on the behalf of the defendant to be as inclusive as possible. What do y'all think about that? What do you think about that? So right now, I'm going to shift just a little bit, and I may come back to that. Ananya, let me see, what's her name? Ananya Fanka is on the stand. She works for the U.S. Attorney's Office. She's been there for 2 years. She's a paralegal specialist, and she's what they call a summary witness. And her job is to review charts to make sure that everything is accurate. She checks the accuracy. She reviews the evidence. She makes sure that it aligns with everything that was presented in the courtroom. This includes text, audio, photos, videos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They asked her, can you kind of describe the first exhibit that we're placing here on the video screen? She said, this is a timeline chart. I reviewed this to, once again, establish the accuracy of it. These are they said, what's in it? She said text messages, multiple text messages, y'all. Devices. They said, whose devices? KK's devices, Diddy's devices. They said, who is KK speaking to? Is she speaking to just one person? She says, no, she's not just speaking to one person. She's speaking to different people. Y'all, when I tell you, baby, this is probably the RICO. This establishes the enterprise. If I were the jurors, and I'm looking, let's just say some of the jurors are like you, they're waiting for proof. They're needing to hear evidence. Today is that. It's a very technical argument. And what she did with the devices that they confiscated, that the feds confiscated from not only KK, 2 devices from KK, but also 1 device from Diddy. They placed everything in chronological order. The first screen, they said, how many pages are here? And they're talking about March 18, 2016. She said there's 30 pages. So she reviewed them, placed in order, and they're organized by date, time zone, record type, from, and to. And they said, when you say from, what do you mean? She said that the sender. To, that's the receiver, right? She also talked about, and give me a second, contents, the contents of the record. Like it'll say the contents, that they spell out the text messages, and also the names of where. So we got Brendan Paul, we got Ryan Lopez, we got KK, we got Jane Doe, we have Diddy. Now this is where they're doing a really good job, because they mentioned Brendan's name on purpose because he's scheduled to take the stand today on the behalf of the government. And remember, Brendan Paul was actually the guy that was caught with the drugs. I think the pink powder. He was arrested. He did do his time, so he will be testifying. And then Ryan Lopez sends a text to KK. This is really good, right? Because this is where your enterprise comes into play. They're highlighting KK as a key party of the enterprise, right? That she's a key component. She is the go-to. Not only is she a go-to, what they're establishing, she's a go-to for Diddy. She's a go-to for Jane Doe. She's a go-to for the assistants of the assistants. Everybody goes to KK to fix things. She's a go-to for money. She's a go-to. She was actually a go-to for Jane Doe. At one point in 2024, Jane Doe received a text from one of the escorts. It was Cabral, the guy that's in ATL. He tried to exploit her for money, right? He told her, I'm gonna leak one of these freak off tapes. Jane Doe called KK, texted KK, and expressed her concern. KK says, I'll fix it. I'm gonna fix it. He's not gonna leak anything. And guess what? She fixed it. Cabral was going to go to a major media outlet, and he gave Jane Doe a specific amount of time to run him that money or the tape would be released. So KK actually said in those text messages, I will fix it. So Ryan sends a text to KK and he says, listen, give me 1 second. Thank you for your patience. So what he said is, listen, I spotted a cowboy in the lobby. The cowboy, he's talking about an escort from Cowboys and Angels, and they typically use this agency to get male escorts, right? And he tells KK he's easy to spot visibly. Like he's standing out like a sore thumb in this hotel. You can tell he's an escort. So then KK says, how long do you think he's going to stay awake? And then Lopez responds, probably until tomorrow, child, probably another 24 hours, right? Now, this is where they tie KK into the sex trafficking. And not only the sex trafficking, in my opinion, but also the enterprise, because they are able to establish, number one, her knowledge, her position in the enterprise, because the assistants are actually texting and reporting to KK, running down to KK the details of what's happening. He's in the hotel lobby. The room will be ready in 30 hours. And the audio that they played is an audio that I discussed with you last week of KK confronting Jonathan Perez. Jonathan Perez took the stand last week. In this secret audio, KK is actually confronting Jonathan because the assistant Shaw, they have their own devices, they have their own iPads, but Jonathan found a freak off video between Diddy and Jane Doe on the iPad. So KK and the rest of the team became very nervous. So she's really drilling him about, how did you gain access to this video? Tell me again, where were you? Who was in the room? Were the maids there? Were the chefs there? So they play this audio.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna pause. Listen, I don't know if y'all care or not, but I gotta switch this to I think I gotta switch this to this stuff going on in overseas. Respectfully, this is kind of some shit's going down. I think just hit a U.S. embassy really quick. So if y'all don't mind to get off of Diddy news and get on something a little more serious, let's see what's going on real quick.
Strikes are not just hitting residential areas. The Israeli strikes have also destroyed the oil depots in Iran. That's also to damage Iran's position as a key energy supplier to the world, how this is going to impact the markets. But before the markets, what we can talk about is that this entire missile hit outside the U.S. embassy is bound to have greater political ramifications, because even though there are calls for de-escalation, the G7 is going to begin shortly, which will also be addressing the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel. Will they be able to have any kind of impact? Because the U.S. president is very much going to be there in attendance along with the other G7 members. And but the situation is clearly mounting, with the number of deaths mounting on both sides, whether it's Israel or Iran.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And like you rightly pointed out, the Israeli attack has extended beyond targeting just nuclear facilities, defense or intelligence infrastructure in Iran, isn't it? In that sense, how do we look at this warning that came in from US President Donald Trump, Akanksha? And should this, or would this be considered as part of what the US president said when he said, if US is attacked in any way, then Iran must be prepared for a US intervention?
Absolutely, because this is not just now left to a conflict between Israel and Iran. We all know that there is Western support backing Israel's strikes that is not just limited to the United States. There is France, there is UK, and in fact, Iran has sent out a greater warning to these countries, in fact, urging them to not intercept or help Israel in intercepting any of the missiles or drones that are being sent out by Iran. So you can see there is a greater geopolitical division over here with the Middle Eastern Islamic world now uniting. We've already seen a resolution being passed by Pakistan in the assembly there, and the Western world, of course, very much uniting against Iran. The threat, of course, remains that as far as Iran's nuclear program is concerned, the United States and Israel collectively believe that with these ongoing airstrikes, especially the ones that took place on Friday, Israel has managed to destroy a sizable part of Iran's nuclear facilities, which has also now sort of placed them behind the timeline as far as the uranium enrichment program is concerned. But several foreign policy analysts and security experts still believe that Iran has the capability of going ahead with several nuclear weapons even now. Will they be able to fend off Iran and its nuclear uranium enrichment program so far? That's the key question. Now,
I'm going to go ahead and pause this. I'm going to switch over to Fox News real quick. Fox News. Let me see where we are. Fox News, bam. All right, give me a second.
From drone and missile strikes launched by Iran. The two sides trading more attacks overnight as that conflict continues to escalate. Jennifer Griffin, live from the Pentagon, brings us up to speed from her post now. And Jennifer, hello.
Hi, Bill. The Israelis, using American-made F-35 stealth fighter jets, did in less than 4 days something that the Russian Air Force has been incapable of doing in Ukraine for 3.5 years. It established air superiority. That means Israeli non-stealth F-15 and F-16 fighter jets can now carry out airstrikes and hunt down the mobile ballistic missile launchers that are terrorizing Israeli cities. 2 U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyers, the USS Sullivans and USS Arleigh Burke in the eastern Mediterranean, have been shooting down Iranian missiles aimed at Israel. The Navy has ordered the USS Thomas Hudner for backup, along with a 4th Navy destroyer. And we have now learned the aircraft carrier strike group, the USS Nimitz, on its final sea voyage will deploy from the Pacific. Deeply symbolic, since it was the Nimitz deployed in 1980 and its helicopters that were part of the failed U.S. effort to rescue the American hostages held at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. The U.S. has been in a shadow war against Iran ever since. Israel may not be able to reach the parts of Iran's nuclear program that are buried inside mountains and underground without U.S. help. U.S. B-2 bombers are the only air asset that can drop the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs known as the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Only the U.S. has them. When pressed on whether Trump had denied any military requests like the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs delivered by those B-2 bombers needed to hit Iran's deeply buried nuclear sites, Netanyahu deflected, saying it was President Trump's decision. Quote, "I trust his judgment completely." That from Brett Baer's exclusive interview with the Israeli Prime Minister yesterday. Bill?
Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer Griffin, the Pentagon. Thank you. Dana?
And for more on all of this, we do have that special report anchor, Brett Baer, with us. And Brett, just as we were talking in the last few minutes, there is a new exclusive report from the Wall Street Journal that says this: a battered Iran signals it wants to de-escalate hostilities with Israel and negotiate as long as the United States stays out of the fight. This is just developing now. Let's get your take on it, since you are quite up to speed.
Yeah, good morning, Bill and Dana. I asked Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday about the Iran foreign minister talking to reporters, saying if Israel stops attacking, we will stop counterattacking and get to the table, suggesting that they were coming to the table. This is what the Iran foreign minister said, with a deal that possibly America would see as acceptable. The prime minister said that is essentially BS. He said that's just not true. It's a bunch of hogwash, in his words, that when they were coming to the table, he cited the supreme leader saying death to America, death to Israel, as that was happening. So I think there's a lot of skepticism about this outreach. That said, President Trump has said he does want to get back to the table if they're serious about agreeing to dismantlement.
Yeah, a couple of things here. It struck me what General Keane was arguing a moment ago when I specifically about that. The president of Israel, Herzog, was with Dana and me about half an hour ago. Fordow is apparently the most fortified nuclear site in the entire country of Iran. So far as we can tell, it's hard to reach. Half a mile buried beneath rock inside of a mountain. Here is President Herzog on the question of going nuclear in real time. Watch. Can they fuel a bomb amidst this war on day 4 already?
As far as I know, I don't think it's feasible. I think that would be a very dangerous development. We are trying with all our might and capabilities and our heroic fighters and pilots to make sure that they don't get there, but rather that we delay, postpone, undermine their capability of getting to the bomb.
I don't want to get too far ahead of this, but Keene's argument is the United States has to use bunker buster bombs now to take out this facility. Otherwise, the Arab region looks at you and says, what was this war all about? In a year or two, you get to fortify that center yet again. Did Netanyahu go there with you?
I went many times to try to get that answer. I have heard privately that the ask has happened, but not the response. I don't know what the response is. Prime Minister Netanyahu wouldn't get that specific. It is true that the B-2 bomber is the only thing that can carry the 30,000-pound MOP, the massive ordnance penetrator, the bunker buster that can get into the half-mile deep mountain lair, if you will, of Fordow. And then Isfahan is another facility that's buried deeply and where enriched uranium is stored. So the Iranians have a couple of facilities that only U.S. technology could get to. And the real question is whether President Trump will decide that that's worth it now. And that's where this hinges.
You know, Russia apparently, according to the wires, wants to be seen as a peacemaker in this situation, saying that it could help communicate between Israel and Iran. And yet it doesn't seem to want to be a peacemaker in its own region. You have President Trump in Canada today with the G7. They're likely to talk about Israel, and Zelensky is going to be in Canada as well. And I wonder how Russia fits into all of this.
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. I mean, the fact that President Trump had this call with President Putin and Putin volunteering to get in the middle of Israel and Iran as this peacekeeping role, and yet won't sit at the table with Zelensky to bring the end to the current war that they are fighting is pretty ironic. I think the G7 is going to be pretty loud and boisterous, and a lot of other leaders are going to make their feelings clear about both of these operations.
Yeah. Good to work with Netanyahu, and we'll see what we get today. Thank you, Brett.
All right.
We'll see you at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe.
You're looking live at Tel Aviv, Israel, where at least 8 people were killed.
We got to stay out of it. This is nothing we need to be jumping into. This is nothing we need to be trying to fight. Like they said, we're about to have a G7 debate, and they're talking like, oh, Trump got to answer all these questions to a bunch of bum ass countries that we either fund or protect from getting ran over. Like, okay, if we're the main ones trying to help Ukraine, and at the same time, what's up, Brick City in the chat, and we're the same people that are trying to help Israel, who else is going to help us? Like, even if Putin's somebody who's trying to cause diffusion in the Israel-Iran situation, but not in his own, bro, that's his business. But I don't think it should be the U.S.'s responsibility, good or bad. We should stay out of it, remove our troops, do the same thing we did with Ukraine, and keep it pushing, bro. We got to allow people to handle their handle, man. And we can't be going to G7 debates, letting some punk-ass countries try to tell us where we should do or what we should deploy in our resources, knowing that, bro, this is Netanyahu's fight that he's honestly trying to manipulate the government again, in my eyes. But let's just hear about these recent attacks really quick. Let's see what they got going on. Give me a second.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kaylee McEnany, here with my co-hosts, Emily Campagno and Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Nicole Parker, Fox News contributor and former FBI special agent, and Jeremy Hunt, Veterans on Duty chairman and former Army intelligence captain. But first, let's go live to Mike Tobin, who's in Tel Aviv. What's going on, Mike?
Well, Kaylee, I can tell you that Tel Aviv, usually a bustling city, is relatively quiet right now as most people are electing to stay home close to their bomb shelters in anticipation of another evening of ballistic missile attacks from Iran. As you mentioned, 8 people were killed by the most recent attacks here in Israel. Hundreds have been injured, and rescuers are still on the scene of some of the strike sites, combing through the rubble with the potential of finding survivors trapped in the rubble. Now, the damage from the strikes includes the U.S. consulate just a short distance from where I am here in Tel Aviv. The U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee, says the damage to the consulate was minor. No personnel were injured. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu toured the Tal Naf air base in central Israel. He boasted to troops that Israel has destroyed Iran's air defenses and fighter jets can operate at will from western Iran to Tehran.
The Israeli Air Force controls the skies over Tehran. This changes the entire campaign. We are on the way to achieving our 2 goals, eliminating the nuclear threat and eliminating the missile threat.
Israeli warplanes are not letting up in Iran. Just today, 20 surface-to-surface missiles were destroyed moments before they were launched, according to the IDF. Also today, we have satellite imagery before and after significant missile production and nuclear facilities were struck. Most significantly, the well-known Natanz nuclear plant shows destruction from Israeli bombs. The IDF also claims warplanes have destroyed 1/3 of Iran's missile launchers and their missile launching capability. Kaylee?
Thank you, Mike. Keep us updated. Now, President Trump is revealing where exactly the United States stands in the conflict between Israel and Iran. During an interview with ABC News, Trump reiterated that the U.S. is not currently involved, but he did say, quote, "It's possible we could get involved." President Trump was asked about that reporting last hour and some additional reporting that came from the Wall Street Journal. Here's what he said.
What would it take for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict militarily?
I don't want to talk about that.
What material support and what intelligence support are you providing Israel?
We've always supported Israel. We have for a long period of time, strongly. And Israel's doing very well right now.
Meanwhile, U.S. officials are telling Fox News that President Trump blocked an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, despite Iran's repeated attempts to assassinate President Trump in just the past year. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims President Trump is Iran's top target in the world. Here's what he told Brett Baer on Special Reports.
You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes, they want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number 1. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He said, made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon, which means you cannot enrich. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's enemy number 1.
So, Jeremy, I want to lay out where we are. Last night, there were some U.S. assets that all began moving east. I was closely tracking them on these national security accounts. There's been a ton of reporting that has come out, and we can now confirm, this is Liz Frieden, our producer, the U.S. Air Force is moving a large number of refueling tanker aircrafts to Europe in order to be closer to the Middle East. A U.S. official confirmed this to Fox News. This will provide, this is key, this was being reported by Reuters. Now we can confirm more options for President Trump. A lot of people asking what those options are. Could be supporting Israel defensively, could be something greater. I want to pull up a picture of Fort Dow. This is the nuclear site that's been much discussed. Those nuclear weapons buried about a half-mile down. Israel lacks the capability to take them out without U.S. bunker busters. So the question is this among the options?
Perhaps, and I think it's great how President Trump is laying out all the options there, so that we have freedom to decide how we want to, what involvement looks like. I'll say this: Israel is doing a great service for the United States. I mean,
I will say this: Israel's doing a great service for the United States. All right, buddy, we're gonna go to some real ones real quick. Hold on.
And there's a lot about Fox that I love. And they were kind to me always, even when they fired me, they were nice. I just want to say that. But the one theme that runs longitudinally through the history of Fox is the promotion of wars that don't help the United States. And I don't know
why is that?
It's the owners are committed to that vision, and they are elaborately polite, nice people. You know them, Rupert and Lachlan. I mean, they were sitting here. There's no chance you wouldn't like them, and they're interesting and they're smart and they're just nice. They're super nice, but we disagree fundamentally on that. And the claws really come out at moments like this. You know, most of the time it's, it's fine. But when it really comes down to when it's a question of whether U.S. military power will be exerted on behalf of a foreign country thousands of miles from here, they are all in, and anyone who stands in the way will be destroyed. I don't think it's personal, by the way. I like Tom Cotton. I always like Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss is a very charming person. I like all these people. I always like Mark Levin. Like, I got along with him. I mean, he's blowhard, sad personal life and all that, but I was never mad at Mark Levin or Hannity. I like Hannity.
Brilliant constitutional guy.
Yeah, there are great things about all these people. I don't think they hate me personally. They know I'm not working for Qatar. Though I feel like maybe I should be working for Qatar. Like, what the hell at this point? I've never taken a dime from any foreign country or anybody, actually.
In fact, you just bought out, I think it was announced you bought out your investors. So
yeah, I'm not a money guy. I mean, they're projecting. If you could see my house, like, I've made more money than I deserve, but I've not gotten rich, and I don't live like a rich person. Everyone knows that. They're money people. That's why they're projecting, or they're people with opaque motives. My motives are, I'm like autistic about my whole life.
We got Tucker for real. I thought he was about to be saying some G shit. He over there kissing Fox ass. Like, come on. Be real. We got a real
defeated militarily by Israel, does not want to be bombed to hell by Israel, and does not want to be sanctioned to death economically by the United States, which the U.S. has been doing now for endless years. So Iran has said for 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, unequivocally, we don't want a nuclear weapon. We want an agreement with you. We want you to lift sanctions, and we want a no nuclear system, and with all verifications and monitoring and safety as well. We want to have our nuclear power plants. We want our own military. We're not going to disarm in a region where Israel attacks every country in the region. And by the way, where we have other enemies as well. So we are not going to unilaterally disarm in our region, but we do not want a nuclear weapon. The truth is that has been known for a dozen years in detail at the highest levels. And
so what's the problem? That seems like a pretty good basis for an agreement.
The problem, there is no problem in reaching a sound agreement. And by the way, with the nuclear power plants, which are in dozens of countries, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has successfully monitored and set up absolutely rigorous monitoring, and Iran is open to that and has said so repeatedly, and has said it would work with the neighbors on the fuel supply chains and all the rest. There is no obstacle to this. And I think we're close to an agreement with Iran, in fact, thanks to President Trump, because Netanyahu says, no, we need to bomb the hell out of them. We need to defeat them like we defeated Saddam and Assad and Gaddafi. We need to take out this evil regime. That's his line.
So it's not about nukes, what you're saying. You're saying it's not about nukes, it's about regime change.
I think for sure. And that's been true all along.
So why not just say that? Why lie? Why does Fox News tell me every single, not that I have a TV, but I hear Fox News is telling everyone every day they're, moments away from a nuclear. We cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Day after day after day. Why not just say no?
I think, by the way, that's true. And Ron would agree with that. Okay? Yes, that's what we're saying.
So, but if you went on television right now, if you were back on your old perch on Morning Joe and you said, actually, Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon, they would accuse you immediately of being an agent of Iran.
They might. Because maybe someone would tell them in their little earpiece to say that, because that's how it works.
But you're saying that's true. I mean, you're acting like that's like a non-controversial statement. No, Iran doesn't want to bomb. They've said they don't. They just don't want to get attacked.
They have said for years, remove our sanctions, normalize relations, stop trying to overthrow us, tell your bulldog Israel to stop threatening us with war. And we can have perfectly normal relations, and we don't want a nuclear weapon. It's a much bigger headache than we want. We don't want it.
Boy, that is not the story that any American news channel tells ever.
I'm shocked. We live in the world of narratives. For many years, the Iranians were asking, how do we reach the Biden White House? How do we want to open up channels? We want to negotiate. Of course, they wouldn't talk to them. We know the president now, we knew then, but now it's confirmed. The president wasn't in any shape to talk to anybody. And the administration was the biggest foreign policy failure of one can imagine. But the Iranians have been saying all along, we want to negotiate. And as soon as President Trump was elected, at least I got inquiries. Do you know anyone in the White House? Do you know anyone in the president's team? How can we make contact? That's not the behavior you make if you're relentlessly trying to go to a nuclear bomb.
So what about the story that you hear endlessly that Iran is planning to nuke the United States, that's on their agenda?
Huh?
Yeah, right.
Huh?
So you consider that like insane?
I consider that so bewildering. If a grown-up says that, we need to have a long heart-to-heart talk about a lot of facts. But that is simply the most absurd imaginable idea.
So no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, it's hard to deny that his second term has been
a great civilization that has lasted for 5,000 years. They're not going to bring it to an end by bombing the United States and having Persia or Iran disappear from the world map, literally, physically, by atom, by such an attack. So it's not.
So why are we going through all this? I mean, the full attention of huge parts of the U.S. government, billions and billions and billions and trillions over the years of American tax dollars have gone to responding to this threat. We have bases all around the region, all focused on Iran, which we maintain, including a huge one in Qatar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this effort by the United States focused on this Iranian threat that you claim doesn't exist.
Remember that Iran was first of all, Iran was a democratic country. In 1953, the prime minister at the time, named Mossadegh, had this absolutely outlandish idea, which was that the oil under their ground belonged to Iranians. This was a very weird idea because the British knew it belonged to the British. The Americans expected that it belonged to the Americans in the new age. And so CIA and MI6 overthrew the Iranian democracy. Then we installed a police state known as the Shah of Iran and SAVAK, its supposed intelligence and enforcement authority from from 1953 to 1978, when the Shah was dying of cancer, and he was a hated figure in Iran. Jimmy Carter was talked into taking him into into the United States, and that provoked the reaction and the taking of hostages of American hostages in Iran. And the Iranian Revolution was taken badly by the United States, but Iran had been our fortress. And why Iran? Because this was part of our anti-Soviet effort. Right. This was part of our Cold War effort. So Iran turned from police state ally to America's foe and Israel's foe. And by the way, in 1980, the United States and 1981 in particular, the United States armed Saddam Hussein massively to go kill Iranians. So we told Iraq, go invade Iran. And we supported an absolutely bloody, disastrous war between Iraq and Iran. We loved it. It was the two scorpions fighting in the bottle, killing each other.
Fought in part by children.
On American, on the American dime. So our position towards Iran has been an aggression since 1953. Actually, remember, the American deep state doesn't care about any other people at all. Whatever happens to them, it doesn't care about the Ukrainian people. It doesn't care about the people we're, quote, saving. It cares about whatever fight it's in. The fight might be against Russia, in which case the Ukrainians are used. The fight might be for Israel, in which case some other jihadists are used, whatever.
Or the Kurds.
The Kurds or whoever is convenient at the time. So Iran is kind of amazingly incurring this for 75 years, and for the last dozen years saying, peace, come on, make peace. President Trump is close to it right now. Again, as in all the other cases we have been discussing, the deep state narrative is deep. It's long-standing. It's not shallow. It's pretty much empty. It's pretty much concocted, but it's deep. And so in order to overcome the deep state, in this case, it's the Israel or Zionist lobby, because it's got a pretty complicated domestic heritage and base. In order to overcome what has been 20 years of wars of choice in the Middle East and to stop them, it requires a lot of political capital and attention by President Trump.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that.
Give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. I was looking over certain videos. I want to play. I had a few of them right now. I'm just trying to let me see what else.
20 women and children. The entire country is under attack. Israel's Air Force has claimed to have struck Mashhad Airport, about 2,300 kilometers from Israel, making it the longest reach of Israeli attacks since Friday. Israeli strikes have targeted Iranian nuclear and missile facilities and assassinated military commanders and scientists. In the last 24 hours, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps intelligence chief Mohammad Kazemi and his deputy Hassan Muhaqiq were killed. President Masoud Pezeshkian has warned Tehran's response will be more decisive and severe if Israel's hostile actions continue.
They have already passed all the red lines. And when they pass these red lines, Iran needs to take serious actions against that. The same model that was happening in Gaza and in Lebanon is being repeated by the Israelis here.
In response, there was another hit in Haifa. Iranian missiles hit near the city's energy plant. Israel's main port city is being targeted by Iran after Israel attacked Iranian oil facilities. Air defense systems in Tel Aviv were triggered early on Monday morning to intercept Iranian missiles. Air raid sirens were activated in cities across Israel, and people were told to take shelter. Multiple buildings have been destroyed as Israel's advanced air defenses were unable to block all missiles. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says it's using new methods in this latest wave, which disrupted Israel's defense systems and caused them to target each other. Iranian targets included Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's residence and military sites.
The government has not been able to speak clearly about such an off-ramp or about an exit strategy or about an end game. Many options have been floated, from regime change to slowing down the nuclear program. So a lot of Israelis are more cheerful than they've been in a while, especially after the debacle of Gaza.
Israel triggered the crisis.
I'm gonna use that as a little lunch break. I'm gonna come back around probably like 6, 7 p.m. and get some things cracking, but I gotta get something to eat. I ain't gonna lie, I gotta get something to eat like immediately. And like I said, let my laptop charge, get something to eat, let some more shit pop off. And I will be seeing you guys, like I said, about like an hour or two, probably like 7 p.m. the latest. But I'm gonna holler at you guys later, man. Peace out. Stay safe and tap in, man. Hit Cash App, $ Florida Boy J. And please like, share, and subscribe. I am 95 subscribers away from 6,000. 95 subscribers away from 6,000 on YouTube. So please hit that link and subscribe to the channel. And we will see you guys later. Thank you.